Comrades, this is Juan Marino speaking, National Deputy of Argentina, militant and founder of the Piquetero Party. First of all, I want to thank you for the invitation to this anti-NATO conference organized by the Christian Rakovsky International Socialist Centro. We are united with Savas Matsas of the EEK of Greece and Sungur Sabran of the DIP of Turkey by a common militant experience in the CRFI, the Coordinating Committee for the Refundation of the Fourth International. 20 years ago, I was a member of the Workers' Party. We were expelled from the Workers' Party in 2010. The expulsion was promoted by Gabriel Solano, the same people who in 2019 expelled Jorge Altamira, Marcelo Ramal, and more than 1,000 militants. I went on fighting for the dictatorship of the proletariat and in defense of catastrophism, together with my comrades of the revolutionary Piquetero tendency, TPR, today the Piquetero Party. We hope, therefore, that this will be the first of many joint initiatives, because for us this event feels like a homecoming, a reunion that fills us with joy. Secondly, let me say that in the face of the barbarism of war, we are not alone, but we are indeed a tiny minority. Few are those of us who, following Lenin, seek to turn the imperialist war into a revolutionary civil war. Recognizing both things, with realism and historical perspective, is the starting point. So it was at the beginning of the First World War, so it was again in the Second, and so it is, how could it be otherwise, on the eve of the Third World War, which began in February 2022 with the war between Russia and Ukraine, or perhaps even in March 2011 in Syria. What we must grasp is that our isolation is causal, not casual. Revolutionaries never enter a world war as a majority, precisely because the bourgeoisie march to war only when they believe that they have already secured their rear. That is why Trump unleashes ICE inside the United States, along with the plan of war, invasion, and annexation known as Greater North America, and the Don't Row Doctrine for our entire American continent. That is why internal militarization is advancing in Europe as the expression of external war, and conscription is coming back, with Germany and France in the lead. War, therefore, must not be greeted with a false optimism, as if it foreshadowed our future victory. On the contrary, world war is the result of our previous defeats, and, unless a historic action of the masses intervenes, it foreshadows the nuclear extermination of humanity at the hands of techno-fascism. We must fight off any messianism, any apocalyptic optimism, as we would fight the plague. Historical materialism is not a millenarian consolation. It is a program of struggle for the self-emancipation of the exploited masses of today. The Leninist triad of crisis, war, revolution holds true on one condition, that we understand that it is the dialectic of the masses that transforms war into revolution. In order to draw the conclusions of the First and Second World Wars, then, the masses will necessarily have to pass first through the purgatory of a new world war. As Rosa Luxemburg said, there is a particular revolutionary method for curing the people of its illusions, but the remedy in this, as unfortunately in all previous revolutions, must be bought at the price of blood. Thus, the change in the attitude of the masses from pacifist resistance against the war to the insurrectionary offensive to overthrow the pro-war governments will not be the product of socialist propaganda alone, but above all, of the masses' own experience. Let me sharpen the diagnosis even further. We cannot yet say that a mass struggle for peace has emerged that is truly proportional, that truly matches in scale to the virulence of the war now underway. Have the masses responded? Yes, and that is why in this dark hour we are not alone. We stand together with the masses who march and go on strike against the war, the genocides and conscription. But they have lagged far behind the challenge that the hour demands. It could not be otherwise without first throwing off the dead weight of the reformist and treacherous leaderships. Let us take a look. In the United States, we salute the No Kings marches, the rebellion of Latino migrants, the student solidarity with Gaza and the resistance against ICE. And we hope that Trump and his wars suffer an electoral defeat in November. But that is not enough. In Europe, we salute the workers' strikes and the militant solidarity against the Anglo-Zionist genocide in Gaza. In Italy, the most advanced case in all of Europe, we can point to everything from massive demonstrations of 1 million people in Rome and nationwide general strikes to the courageous refusal of port workers to load weapons bound for Israel. On a smaller scale, we could mention examples in Spain, Belgium, Greece, Portugal, France, and the United Kingdom. In their own ways and within their own possibilities, the masses have responded. Revolutionaries, therefore, have no right to indulge in centrist complaints against the masses because it is not enough. If we arrive at a third world war, it is not because the masses do not fight or do not understand, but because of the lack of revolutionary praxis. Marx's famous 11th thesis. The masses learned the humanitarian lessons against the genocides, from Auschwitz to Gaza, but they rejected the expropriation of capital. The USSR and Comecon once existed. This made it possible to deprive the imperialist monopolies' metabolism of strategic natural resources, and to free 1/3 of humanity from the exploitation of man by man. The USSR and Comecon exist no more. The masses preferred the European Union, and to this very day remain clinging to those democratizing pro-imperialist illusions, even in Cuba. At this very moment, the masses are protesting with slogans like Patria y Vida, Homeland and Life, and Down with Communism, while the Cuban government responds in a centrist and eclectic manner with its 176 measures of economic opening. It is a desperate attempt to survive under the genocidal blockade by the United States and the combined internal pressure of these protests and of a bureaucracy that yearns to turn itself into a bourgeoisie. Not to mention, in Europe, the Euro-communists, former communist parties, and the anti-capitalists, former Trotskyists, who erased the dictatorship of the proletariat from their programs in order to present themselves to capital as a harmless variant. It was that renunciation of the Workers' United Front and of workers' power that led to the dead-end trap of the Troika government under Syriza. All this political experience of the masses with their leaderships is enormously valuable, but it is not enough. And so we come back to the question that guides us. What is to be done? First, to promote this kind of anti-war conference in order to regroup the internationalist vanguard, we must open a dialogue with every conference and congress that takes a stand against the war, against conscription, and against the genocides. Historical experience confirms that we must open our arms without sectarianism, because when the war becomes truly a world war, that is, world war not only in its geographical extension, but inter-imperialist in its nature, those who today swear by peace will be the first to betray in defense of their own imperialism. To give a few examples, we have already had the GPM, Global Progressive Mobilization in Barcelona, the Soviet turn in Russia, and the International Conference Against War in London. And on July 22 and 24, there will be a new conference in Athens, held by our former comrades of the CRFI, together with the British SWVP and other groups. There will surely be many more conferences to come. With a lot of them, we must build coordination to promote common mass actions. Second, we must distinguish the preparatory work of propaganda from the Marxist method of the class struggle. Today, we must push forward the mass struggle against the war, with its prejudices, with its slogans, and with its present leaderships. We must not use the program as an excuse to isolate ourselves. That is why we must make Trotsky's method at Zimmerwald our own and drive forward the mass struggle for peace. Let all of Europe follow the example of the strikes in Italy. Let mass strikes against the war join the anti-war marches. And from Latin America, we add the road of popular rebellion. Europe must go beyond mere strike gymnastics and make the methods of Bolivia its own. 53 days of popular rebellion with more than 150 roadblock points. A road of struggle that guarantees no victories, but allows conclusions to be drawn. The mass struggle for peace, not sectarian propagandism, is what puts the debate in order and opens the revolutionary road. That is the one and only true war against war. Third, and finally, we face the challenge of giving birth to a revolutionary workers' international. For us, the Fourth International. The challenges are many, but the agreements are by no means minor. In this conference, we stand against Greater North America and against Greater Israel. In this conference, we know that Malvinas are Argentine, Gibraltar is Spanish, and Taiwan is China's. That is why we repudiate Marco Rubio, and why in the manifesto we denounce the new crusaders against Russia, China, and the Global South. In this conference, we know how to distinguish a war between rival imperialisms, that is, a war among the European countries and the Yankees that today make up NATO, from an imperialist war against the oppressed countries. That is why the manifesto for this conference says, no complacency in front of the descent to barbarism, no neutrality or equidistant stand between the mass murderers of the peoples and the resistance of the peoples, for the defeat of US NATO imperialism. In sum, with the banners of Lenin and Trotsky, let us advance forward for a united anti-imperialist front. We have 5 proposals from the Piquetero Party. 1, to publish a booklet with all the speeches and a political document from each organization. 2, to publish a website with the contact details of all the speakers so that we can reach out to one another. 3, to publish a manifesto to be approved in a Zoom meeting summarizing the conclusions of the conference. 4, in each of our countries to organize unity rallies for the dissolution of NATO and in defense of Cuba, Iran, Palestine, Lebanon, Yemen, Venezuela, the Sahel, Russia, and China. 5, to endorse the call to action of the International Conference Against War held in London. That call mentions 3 valuable initiatives we should endorse: a joint international day of demonstrations in support of a free Palestine on October 10, An international weekend of demonstrations against militarization, war escalation, and conscription on November 21 and 22. A day of action, proposed by dock workers from Italy, France, and Greece in a date to be confirmed. Comrades, the proletarians have a world to win. Proletarians of all countries, unite.